Single dad yelled at the babysitter. The next morning, she reopened his late wife's bakery. The smell of burnt toast clung to the kitchen like a ghost of good intentions. Jake Morgan stood at the counter, shoulders hunched, staring at the toaster as if it had personally betrayed him. Outside, the morning was already noisy with leaf blowers and delivery trucks. But inside his small house, it was too quiet. Too quiet because Lily wasn't here to fill the space with her laugh anymore. Lily had been his wife, the heartbeat of the little bakery on Main Street, and since the accident last winter, Silence had become an uninvited roommate. His 7-year-old daughter Emma sat at the table in her pajamas, quietly sculpting a snowman out of mashed bananas. Her brown hair stuck up like she'd been electrocuted by grief and cartoons all at once. Jake glanced at her, then at the clock. Late again. He had an interview in 40 minutes at a construction supply warehouse, a job he didn't want but needed. Emma needed someone to watch her for the day, and his neighbor had canceled last minute. He had hired a babysitter through a local app in desperation, the kind where you didn't even see a photo, just a name and a background check badge. He heard a knock, sharp, punctual. He opened the door expecting someone older, brisk, clipboard ready. Instead, a young woman stood on the porch wearing a faded flannel shirt and jeans with paint smudges on the knees. Her dark auburn hair was pulled into a loose braid, and her eyes were a startling gray, like storm clouds that hadn't decided if they were dangerous or kind. "Hi, I'm Harper," she said, voice calm. "You must be Jake." "Yeah," he said, frowning. "You sure you've done this before? Worked with kids?" "Yeah," she said. "Worked with parents who ask that?" "Also yes." Something in her tone was disarming, like she'd stepped into this mess on purpose. Emma peeked from behind Jake's leg, holding her banana snowman like a shield. ... "Emma," Harper said gently, crouching down. "Is that a banana snowman? That's genius. Does he have a name?" Emma blinked. "Mr. Slippery." "Perfect," Harper said solemnly, as if she'd just met royalty. Jake crossed his arms. "Look, she's shy, and just be careful, okay? She's been through a lot." "So have you," Harper said softly. The words caught him off guard, like a slap of truth. He cleared his throat and muttered, "Instructions are on the fridge. Snacks, no sugar, bedtime by 8. I'll be back by 6. He left before she could say anything else, half hoping she'd be gone when he returned. He spent the day stacking lumber while thinking of everything except lumber. When he finally dragged himself home, he was ready for the usual chaos of babysitters quitting mid-shift. But the house was quiet. Emma was asleep on the couch under a blanket. Harper sat cross-legged on the floor, sorting crayons by shade like it mattered deeply. "She's fine," Harper whispered. "Ate grilled cheese, Drew ate cats. No drama, just art and cheese." He nodded, unsure what to do with the relief curling in his chest. Then he saw it, the photo frame on the mantel. Lily's Bakery, sugar and bloom, frozen in summer sunlight. Harper was looking at it too. "You ran that?" she asked. "We did," he said shortly. "It's closed now." "Why?" she asked, gentle. "Because she died," he said, too fast. "And I couldn't keep it alive without her." Harper didn't look away. "She must have been incredible. She was everything," he said, and instantly regretted saying it out loud. Harper stood. "I'll lock up behind me." After she left, Jake stood in the kitchen listening to the hum of the fridge, feeling the quiet like pressure. He hated how easily she'd walked into the space Lily had left behind. Hated more that part of him didn't hate it. The next morning, Jake woke to the smell of cinnamon. Real cinnamon. For a second, he thought he was dreaming. He stumbled into the kitchen and froze. The counters were dusted with flour. The oven light glowed, and Harper stood at the stove in an apron, hair pulled up, calmly icing pastries. "What are you doing?" he demanded. "Making breakfast," she said, "and maybe something else." "You can't just—" He stopped. Emma was at the table, giggling with her mouth full of warm cinnamon roll. Her eyes were bright in a way he hadn't seen since before Lily's funeral. "This is crossing a line," he said, louder than he meant. "This isn't your house. You're just the babysitter." Harper set down the icing spoon. "You're right, but this house needed to smell alive again. It's not your job to fix it." "Maybe not," she said, "but maybe it's someone's." He opened his mouth to argue, but nothing came. He stormed out instead, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the photo frames. Harper flinched, but didn't stop moving. Emma looked between them, silent, like she'd just watched something fragile crack. Jake sat in his truck, gripping the steering wheel until his knuckles went white. Anger burned at nothing he could name. Not Harper, not Lily. Just the emptiness that followed him like a shadow he couldn't shake. When he came home that night, the kitchen was clean. Harper was gone. Emma was asleep again, curled around a stuffed bunny. The air smelled faintly of sugar, like a memory trying to stay. On the table was a note. "I'm sorry. I crossed a line, but I saw something in that photo. She built something beautiful. Maybe it's still there, just waiting for someone to turn the lights back on." He crumpled the note and threw it away. But at midnight, he fished it out again, smoothing the paper in his trembling hands. Something in her words lodged in him like a seed, small and stubborn. The next morning, he got in his truck, not to go to work, but to drive past Sugar and Bloom. The windows were dusty. The sign was cracked. But the ghost of Lily's handwriting was still on the chalkboard. "Today's special. Try something new." He sat there a long time, engine idling, wondering if Harper was just reckless or if she had seen something he had forgotten how to see. Jake killed the engine and sat there breathing in the dust like it might tell him what to do. The bakery's front window wore a film of months-old grief, and beyond it, he could still picture Lily moving fast in the morning rush, hair up, flower on her cheek, hands confident as music. He reached into his jacket without thinking and felt the familiar weight of the keys, the ones he hadn't used since the funeral. He closed his fist around them until the teeth bit his palm. A shadow crossed the glass. He looked up. Harper stood on the sidewalk, holding 2 paper cups, hair-braided, the same faded flannel under a jean jacket. For a second, guilt hit him. He'd yelled at her, and she'd shown up anyway. She didn't wave like a friend, or flinch like someone in trouble. She just nodded once, as if to say, "I'm here if you want me to be." He got out of the truck. "You following me now?" "I took a chance you'd come," she said. She handed him a cup. "Cinnamon latte. I figured if you threw it at me, at least it would smell like a memory." "That's a weird apology," he said, but the heat through the lid steadied him. He stared at the door. "I don't know if I can walk in." "You don't have to," she said. "You can hand me the keys and wait by the truck, or we can just sit on the curb and drink these until the sun does something dramatic." He swallowed. "I shouldn't have yelled." The frog. "You were protecting what's left," she said. "It's a hard job." They stood like that a long beat, the town humming awake around them. Finally, Jake unlocked the door. The bell over the frame gave a weak jingle, like it remembered being louder. Inside, dust motes floated in slanted light. The chalkboard still said, "Try something new." Jake's throat tightened. Harper didn't rush in with fixes. She walked the perimeter, trailing her fingers over empty display cases, looking at the ovens with something like reverence. "This place has good bones," she said. "So did everything else," he muttered. She crouched by a crate on the floor, lifted a folded cloth, and found a recipe card box beneath it. Lily's handwriting, looping and certain. Harper touched the lid like it might shatter. "May I?" she asked. He nodded. She opened it and smiled at the first card. lemon poppy seed, with extra zest because sunshine is a choice, she read, voice soft. She wrote notes to herself on the ba. Jake forced a laugh that wasn't a laugh. He wrote notes to everything. The microwave had a pep talk. Of course it did, Harper said, and there was a glimmer in her eyes that said she understood more than frosting and flour. He expected her to pitch a wild plan, a miracle in 3 steps. Instead, she said, I made some calls last night. There's a community kitchen at Grace Street Church that holds a weekend market permit. They said we can bake there if someone with food safety training is present. I am. You are what? Certified, she said. Culinary school drop-in, not drop-out. I finished the sanitation courses. I left the program when I realized I cared more about people eating together than about plating heights. Harper. I also talked to city permits, she continued, pulling papers from her jacket. We can do a 1-day soft opening as a community remembrance pop-up at your own premises if the baked goods come from a licensed kitchen and we don't use the in-house ovens yet. No hot food, no dairy fillings. Think muffins, cookies, quick breads. We give away most of it, accept donations, see who shows up. We gather data, not debts. He blinked. You did all that since yesterday? I didn't sleep much, she admitted. Look, I'm not here to hijack your life. I'm here because when I saw Emma smile over a cinnamon roll, I remembered what rooms like this can do. If this is wrong, say stop, and I will. But if you're afraid that moving forward is betrayal, I need you to know that grief isn't a lock. It's a door you keep walking through. His jaw worked, and if no one comes, if it hurts worse, then we take the sign down and tell Emma we tried something brave together, she said. And if they do come, we listen. We don't promise what we can't deliver. We see if this town still wants sugar and bloom, and if it wants it with you. He set the coffee on the counter and stared at the recipe box until the words blurred. Emma, he said, I need to pick her up from school at 2. She used to do homework in that corner. Lily put a little table there. I swear I can still hear the scratch of crayons. Then we save that corner, Harper said. We make it hers again. By noon, they were at the church kitchen. Stainless steel counters, humming refrigerators, a bulletin board with faded bake sale flyers. Harper moved like someone who had memorized the geography of heat. Jake washed bowls, measured flour, and tried not to cry when the first tray of lemon poppy seed muffins rose like small suns. They kept Lily's handwriting on the counter, like a compass. Harper asked before changing any measurement. When she suggested an orange glaze, she read the note on the card aloud first. She wrote, Don't drown the lemon, let it talk, so we'll keep the glaze thin. She would have liked you, Jake said before he could stop himself. Harper didn't look up. I would have liked her. They loaded boxes into the truck, returned to Main Street, and propped the bakery door open. Harper set a chalkboard on the sidewalk. Today only, Sugar and Bloom remembers. Pay what you can, take what you need. Jake taught Emma how to stamp paper bags with the old logo. Emma stamped her sleeve, then her cheek, then laughed so hard she hiccuped. At 3 o'clock, a woman in scrubs paused on her way to a shift. Is this real? She asked, eyes shining. It's something, Jake said. She took a muffin, left a 20 in the jar, and whispered, I used to come here when I got off nights. Your wife. She wrote, You did it, on my coffee cup every time. Point. I kept one in my locker for a year. She squeezed his hand and went on. Then Mr. Alvarez from the hardware store came with his grandson. I thought I smelled summer, he said, pretending not to wipe his eyes. He told Emma he used to buy her mother's cinnamon knots and call them rote tricks. Emma listened like it was a bedtime story. More people came. A teacher with chalk on her fingers. A mail carrier with rain on his cap. A teenager who said she'd sat under that chalkboard the day she didn't think she could go back to school. Lily had slipped her a scone and said, Tomorrow counts more than yesterday. The jar filled, but the thing that filled Jake was lighter than money and heavier than air. It was proof that Lily had been real in other people's days, not just in his memories. Harper kept the pace gentle. When a man asked if they'd be open tomorrow, she said, "We're listening today." When a reporter from the local paper rolled up, she angled the story away from tragedy porn. "Write about how communities keep kitchens warm," she said. "Write about how a girl named Emma is stamping bags like a boss." Around 5, the sky turned bruised with rain. A gust threatened the chalkboard. Harper caught it with one hand, laughing. Jake looked at her in that moment, hair loose from the braid, flour on her cheek, eyes steady, and felt something shift. Not a replacement, not a fix, just a new gear clicking into a machine that had been grinding itself to sparks. When the last muffin left in the hands of an elderly couple who promised to bring their church friends next time, Jake locked the door and leaned his forehead against the glass. The roux hummed with a kind of afterglow. Emma fell asleep on the saved corner's little rug, clutching the stamp like a trophy. "We did it," Harper said quietly. "We did something," he corrected, but his voice had softened. He counted the donations. It wasn't a fortune, but it was a beginning. Enough to pay overdue utilities and schedule a proper inspection. On the last bill in the stack, Lily had doodled a tiny loaf of bread with wings. He traced the wings, then set the bill down and exhaled. Harper wiped the counter and looked at him with that steady gray gaze. "I need to ask you something," she said. "Not as a babysitter, as someone who believes in rooms like this." "Okay," he said. "Let me help for real. Not to take over, not to turn it into something it isn't. I can handle permits, scheduling, vendor calls, morning prep. You guide the heart. We go slow, make it legal, make it safe. If at any point it feels wrong, we stop." He swallowed. "Why do you care this much?" She hesitated, and for the first time he saw uncertainty in her. "Because 3 years ago, after I left school, I worked in a kitchen that didn't care about people. It broke me. I almost left food for good. Then I found your wife's blog. She wrote about hospitality as a survival skill. She answered my email at 3 a.m. like I was worth time. I never met her, but she kept me from quitting what I love. Helping you is the closest I can get to saying thank you." Jake sat down hard on the stool Lily used to lean against when her feet hurt. The room swayed and settled. He looked at Emma sleeping, at the chalkboard that still dared him to try something new, at Harper holding her breath, like the whole day might collapse if he said no. "Okay," he said. We try carefully. We try together." Harper's shoulders relaxed, not in triumph, but in relief. "Then tomorrow," she said, "we'll make a list that fits on one page." "Tomorrow," he echoed, and for the first time in a long time, the word didn't scare him. Outside, rain began in a soft, approving hush. Inside, Jake turned the sign to closed and didn't turn off the porch light. He left it glowing against the dark glass like a small, stubborn promise. Jake woke before dawn to the creak of the house settling. For a moment he thought it was Lily in the kitchen again, humming badly as she kneaded dough. And the ache of that thought was both comfort and blade. He lay staring at the ceiling until the smell of old flour and hope pulled him upright. Downstairs, Emma was curled on the couch, the bakery stamp clutched in her small fist. He tucked a blanket around her and whispered, "We're really doing this, Bug." By 8, Harper was outside the bakery with a clipboard and a cup of black coffee, looking entirely too awake. She wore overalls dusted with flour, like armor, and had her hair twisted into a messy knot that somehow made her eyes sharper. "Morning," she said. "I made a list. It fits on one page." Jake took it and nearly laughed. It was broken into neat little boxes. Inventory, cleaning, licensing, marketing, soft launch calendar. She'd added doodles, tiny muffins wearing sunglasses. It made something in his chest unclench. "We don't have money for half of this." "We don't buy new," she said. "We borrow, repair, salvage. We ask the community. People like this place more than you think." They started with cleaning. Jake scrubbed ovens while Harper climbed ladders to scrape cobwebs from ceiling corners. She hummed under her breath, something soft, wordless. By noon, the bakery smelled like lemon cleaner and memories. Emma wore a bandana and declared herself manager of Sparkle, dragging a mop half her size. Harper handed her a clipboard and whispered, "You're promoted to assistant boss." Emma glowed like a lantern. Mid-afternoon, a man from the health department came for an informal pre-inspection. Jake's hands shook as he walked him through the kitchen. Harper answered questions steadily, knew the codes by heart, smoothed over every doubt. When the inspector left, he said, "Not bad for a place that's supposed to be closed." Jake exhaled like he'd been underwater. Harper grinned. Phase 1, not condemned. That night, they sat cross-legged on the floor, eating takeout. The bakery was stripped bare of dust, shelves gleaming. Jake glanced at the photo of Lily, still taped to the register. "You know this could all collapse, right?" "So could most good things," Harper said. "Doesn't make them less worth trying." In the days that followed, the rhythm took shape. Mornings, Jake mixed batters from Lily's recipe cards, while Harper handled calls to vendors and scheduled volunteer shifts with locals who'd offered to paint or patch drywall. Afternoons, they trained teens from the high school culinary club to frost cupcakes and measure ingredients. Evenings, Jake and Harper sat at the counter planning menus with Emma drawing flowers on the margins. The chalkboard out front read, "Something is coming. We hope it's sweet." Support came from unlikely corners. Mr. Alvarez showed up with reclaimed wood for new shelves. The scrubs-wearing nurse dropped off a box of jars. The teenager who once sat under the chalkboard designed a new logo, still Lily's script, just steadier, like someone had held their hand while they wrote it. The town's small kindnesses knitted together like seams, and for the first time, Jake felt like maybe the place belonged to everyone, not just to his grief. ... Still, fear clung to him. Late one night, after Emma was asleep and Harper had gone home, Jake sat alone at the counter running numbers. Rent, utilities, ingredients. The donation jar had slowed. The savings he'd scraped together were thinning like sugar on rain. He rubbed his eyes until they burned. He didn't hear the door until Harper was standing there, coat damp from drizzle. "Couldn't sleep," she said softly. "Thought you might be doing math at midnight." "It's not adding up," he said. "Then let's change the equation." She slid a folder across the counter. Inside were grant applications for small local business revitalization and a flyer for a weekend farmers market stall. "We sell there while this place finishes inspections. Low overhead, built-in traffic. The grant covers equipment upgrades if we match with volunteer labor. People already volunteered." "You make it sound simple." "It's not, but it's doable." He stared at her. "Why are you still here?" Harper hesitated. "Because I promised someone I wouldn't run from broken things." "Who?" She bit her lip. "My brother. He..." She stopped, gathering the words like shards. "He owned a cafe, closed it when he got sick. I couldn't save it, couldn't save him either. I kept thinking if I'd stayed, if I'd fought harder." She shook her head. "When I saw this place, I thought, maybe I can fight for this one." The words landed like a key in a lock. Jake reached across the counter, not touching her, just close enough that she'd know he heard her. "Then let's fight for it together." The market stall opened under a striped awning on a breezy Saturday. They brought lemon muffins, cinnamon nuts, chocolate chip scones. Harper handled customers like she'd been born to it. Jake worked the cash box, while Emma handed out samples with the solemnity of a diplomat. The line wrapped down the sidewalk. People said Lily's name like it was honey in their mouths. One woman held a muffin to her chest and whispered, "She made me believe mornings weren't enemies." By the end, they'd sold out. The jar overflowed. Emma danced in circles, chanting, "We did it, we did it." Jake caught Harper watching him, eyes bright, and for the first time in years, he felt something dangerous and good. Hope that didn't feel like betrayal. The following Monday, the inspector returned for the official check. Harper moved through the questions like choreography. Emma presented a hand-drawn welcome back poster. The inspector cracked a smile, stamped the form, and said, "You're cleared to open." Jake pressed his palms to the cool glass of the front door as the inspector left. "We're back," he whispered. Harper stood beside him, silent, and in the reflection he saw them not as ruins, but as roots. The night before reopening, the bakery smelled like sugar and nervousness. They prepped trays of pastries and arranged flowers Emma had picked from the yard in mismatched jars. Jake stood at the counter, staring at the old photo of Lily taped to the register. He could almost hear her teasing voice. "Don't burn anything, hero," he whispered. "I hope you see this." Harper came from the back carrying boxes of cupcakes, her braid loose, flour on her cheek. "Big day tomorrow," she said. "Terrifying," he said. "Worth it," she replied. They stayed late, hanging fairy lights across the windows. At midnight, the place glowed like it had been waiting all along for someone to flip the switch back on. Jake locked the door, and for the first time since Lily's accident, he didn't dread tomorrow. He almost wanted to run toward it. The morning came wrapped in golden light, spilling through the windows like it had been rehearsing for this moment. Jake stood on the bakery porch, with the key trembling in his hand. His palms were slick, his chest tight with something tangled between fear and love. Harper stood beside him, steady as ever, wearing a crisp apron that somehow looked like armor. Emma danced barefoot on the welcome mat, holding the chalkboard sign that said, "Sugar and Bloom, open." "You ready, boss?" Harper asked. "Not even a little," Jake said, and turned the key. The bell over the door rang bright and clear, like it remembered how. They moved fast, almost silently, sliding pastries into cases, arranging stacks of warm muffins, setting fresh coffee to drip. Harper placed Lily's on the counter, white, simple, soft, and Jake's throat closed. "For her," she said quietly. He just nodded. At 9, the first customer came, then the second. Then they kept coming, like a dam had broken. The air filled with the low, happy hum of chatter and clinking mugs. Someone laughed, a sound Jake hadn't heard bounce off these walls in a year. Harper worked the counter, like she was conducting music. Jake stayed near the ovens, hands busy, eyes misted. Emma zipped between tables carrying sugar packets like they were crown jewels. Around noon, the place was full. Every table taken, every corner warm. The nurse from before brought her whole shift crew. Mr. Alvarez came with his grandson again. The teenager who'd made the new logo wore it on a shirt she'd printed herself. People left notes on napkins. "Miss this place. Thank you for bringing her light back. This saved my morning." In the swirl of it, Jake caught himself smiling without forcing it. He caught himself watching Harper laugh at something Emma said, and his heart lurched not in grief, but in wonder. The sight was like seeing the sun rise over a familiar hill and realizing it was beautiful again. By mid-afternoon, they were sold out. Jake locked the door as the last customer left, applause echoing faintly in the emptying room. Emma leapt into his arms, legs around his waist, giggling. "We did it," she whispered into his neck. "We did," he said, voice breaking. Harper wiped down the counter slowly, like drawing a breath. "So," she said, "now what?" Jake looked around. The space glowed in the fading light, alive in a way that felt unshakable. "Now we stay," he said. The weeks that followed moved like a song gaining tempo. Word spread. The local paper ran a story titled, "Sugar and Bloom Rises Again." Foot traffic tripled. People sent in photos of old pastries Lily had made, memories folded in frosting and brown paper. Harper kept the business side humming, drawing charts in a battered notebook, while Jake perfected recipes at dawn. They hired 2 part-timers. The chalkboard out front changed daily, but one phrase stayed in the corner: "Sunshine is a choice." Yet in the quiet moments, fear still whispered. One night, after closing, Jake found Harper sitting alone at the counter, staring at a tray of unsold cookies. "Slow day," she said softly. "It happens," he said, sliding onto the stool beside her. "I keep thinking I'll mess this up," she admitted, "that it's all borrowed magic and it'll vanish." "It won't," he said, "because it's not magic. It's work and love and flour." She laughed, small and shaky. "You really are the poet of pastries," he smiled, and then, quieter, "You brought this back." "No," she said, looking at him with those steady gray eyes. "You let me." Something unspoken tightened between them then, soft as the moment before dawn. They didn't move toward it. They just let it exist, glowing like the oven light. The bakery became more than a shop. It became a hearth. They hosted after-school cookie clubs. They let lonely old men linger over coffee refills. They opened early on hard-weather days so the mail carrier could warm up. Jake watched Emma draw chalk daisies on the sidewalk out front and thought, "This is what surviving can look like when it starts to bloom." Spring came. The windows stood open to warm breezes. Harper taught Emma how to knead dough, their laughter spilling like sunlight. Jake watched from the doorway, apron dusted with flour, realizing the silence that used to choke the house had been replaced by something else entirely. Not noise, not chaos, life. One late evening, after they'd closed, Harper stayed behind to balance the books. Jake found her standing by Lily's photo on the wall. She touched the frame gently. "I think she'd be proud," she said. "I think she'd like you," he said. "I didn't come here to be liked," Harper said, smiling softly. "I came here to give Emma a safe day, and maybe to remember what safe can feel like too." He stepped closer. "I'm glad you stayed." She looked up at him, and for a moment, the whole world narrowed to the warm smell of sugar, the creak of the floorboard beneath them, and the space between their breaths. Then Emma barreled out of the back, hair wild, clutching a drawing of the 3 of them standing under the bakery sign, hearts floating overhead. "Family portrait," she announced. Jake took it, heart folding inward like soft dough. "Perfect," he whispered. That night, after Emma was asleep and the stars were sharp above Main Street, Jake and Harper sat on the bakery steps. The sign glowed softly above them. He thought of the first day she'd shown up, paint-smeared jeans, fearless eyes, and how he'd yelled like she was a threat instead of a spark. He thought of Lily's laugh echoing faintly in these walls, and how it had made space for new laughter without fading. "This place was supposed to die with her," he said quietly. "It didn't," Harper said. "No," he said, "it didn't." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "You know," she murmured, "this all started because you yelled at me." "And you didn't leave," he said. "Some things are worth staying for." They sat like that as the town settled into sleep around them, as the lights inside the bakery dimmed to warm embers, as the air smelled of sugar and second chances. Jake closed his eyes, and for the first time in forever, it didn't hurt to imagine tomorrow. And somewhere inside, next to the photo of Lily and the words, "Sunshine is a choice," Emma's crayon family portrait hung proudly on the wall, waiting to keep proving it true. He thought the bakery was where her story ended, but it became the place their new story began. Because sometimes what feels broken is only waiting to bloom again.